Good afternoon, everyone. We are here today to understand children with special needs. Who are children with special needs? What are their requirements? What are their characteristics? And what are the special inputs that they require to cope with their daily living skills? In order to understand an overview of the children with special needs. We start with exceptional children, another term that is used for children with special needs. They are just like other children, but they deviate from what is supposed to be the average in their physical, mental, emotional, and social characteristics. They are children who have some difficulties which come in the way of their being able to function adequately in the family, community, or the school. This difficulty may be physical, cognitive, language, social, emotional, or psychological. These children need special inputs to help them overcome their difficulties. Now, first of all, let us understand who is a child. A child, according to the United Nations, is an individual who is below 18 years of age. Now, the term exceptional children refers to those children who deviate from the normal in their physical, mental, social, emotional, or other characteristics to such an extent that they require special social and educational facilities to develop their optimal capacity. Exceptionality refers to the uniqueness in children. The uniqueness of these children may be noticed in one or more of the following dimensions. For example, it could be observed in the sensory capacities of the child, namely vision, hearing, or in the mobility, or in the socio-emotional aspects, or in the cognitive functioning of the child. Exceptional children are those for whom uniform educational programs may not be effective, hence they need special interventional programs. The uniqueness of the exceptional children may be in the positive or negative direction. They deviate from the average children in both directions, physically, psychologically, or socially. Exceptionality. Now we need to understand three major terms in the area of children with disabilities in order to understand their needs properly. Impairment is one such term. Impairment refers to a diseased or defective tissue or a part of the body which gets affected during childbirth or has been damaged. This is an impairment. And disability refers to the absence of a particular part of the body or organ or reduction in the function of some part of the body. For example, if the cornea of the eye becomes dry and wrinkled, as happens in the case of vitamin A deficiency, then the child can lose his or her sight. So the impairment of the cornea is becoming dry and wrinkled, and loss of sight or reduction of the sight in the function of the eye implies disability. Now, let's understand what is handicap. Handicap implies the problems of the impaired or disabled people when interacting with or adapting to the environment. So, the term handicapped is generally used to refer to the social functioning of the child. Having defined the three terms, we move on to the next slide to have a look at the categories of exceptional children. The Education Act identifies the categories of exceptionality for children, namely behavioral, communicational, intellectual, physical, and children with multiple disabilities. Behavioral exceptionality, a learning disorder characterized by specific behavior problems over a period of time, may be accompanied by one or more of the following: inability to build or maintain interpersonal relationships, excessive fears or anxieties, a tendency to compulsive reaction, or an inability to learn that cannot be traced to intellectual, sensory, or other health factors, or any combination therefore. Communicational. Autism, a severe learning disorder that is characterized by disturbances in the rate of educational development, ability to relate to the environment, mobility, perception, speech, and language. Lack of the representational symbolic behavior that precedes language, hearing impairment, an impairment characterized by deficits in language and speech development because of a diminished or non-existent auditory response to sound. Then we come to intellectual giftedness, an unusually advanced degree of general intellectual ability that requires differentiated learning experience that is provided to these children and not provided normally in the school curriculum. Regular school program to satisfy the level of the educational potential indicated. Mild intellectual disability, a learning disorder characterized by an ability to profit educationally within a regular class with the aid of considerable effort. Now we come to developmental disabilities, a severe learning disorder characterized by an inability to profit from a special education program for students with mild intellectual issues, disabilities because of slow intellectual development, inability to benefit from a special education program that is designed to accommodate slow intellectual development, and they also require self-support. Now we come to the physical area, the physical dimension, the physical disability, a condition of such severe physical limitation or deficiency that requires special assistance in learning situations to provide the opportunity for educational achievement equivalent to those students of the same age or developmental level. Now we come to children with low vision, a condition of partial or total impairment of sight or vision that even with correctional effects does not help in the educational performance. Now we come to multiple disabilities. Multiple exceptionalities are a combination of learning or other disorders, impairments, or physical disabilities that is of such a nature as to require for educational achievement. Disabilities are highlighted below. In the area of physical disability, we have locomotor disability, leprosy cured persons, cerebral palsy, dwarfism, muscular dystrophy, acid attack victims, visual impairment, low vision, hearing impairment, deafness, hard of hearing, speech and language disability. The next category is the intellectual disability, and the third is specific learning disabilities, which includes autism spectrum disorder and mental illness. The 21 disabilities are covered in the Persons with Disabilities Act, which we will be covering in the next session in detail. Our assumptions and attitudes towards persons with disability needs to be changed. Each one of us reacts towards the special child, some of us with understanding, some with sympathy, some with indifference, and some even with disgust. How we react depends to a very large extent on our own life experiences and the attitudes of people around us and the attitudes we have learned to have. Unfortunately, many of us have wrong assumptions about the disabled, which leads to certain negative attitudes and feelings. A common reaction is that of superstition and fear. This attitude, that a person whose body is not normal will also have a mind that is not normal, or that a disabled person is reflected negatively in popular films, etc., also lead to negative assumptions about people with disabilities. Some people enjoy ridiculing the disabled. For them, a person with a physical disability is a source of embarrassment. Some of us feel a revulsion towards children with disabilities, more so if the person has some obvious physical deformity which might make the person not so attractive. Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, the Act replaces the Persons with Disabilities Act of 1995, and as I mentioned earlier, this Act encompasses 21 different categories of people who can benefit from the constitutional provisions that have been given to them as part of their disabilities. Rights and entitlements. Responsibility has been cast upon the appropriate governments to take effective measures to ensure that persons with disabilities enjoy their rights equally. Additional benefits such as reservation in higher education, government jobs, reservation in the allocation of land, poverty alleviation schemes, etc., have been provided for persons with benchmark disabilities and those with high support needs. Every child with a benchmark disability between the age of 16 and 18 years shall have the right to free education. What are the challenges faced by children with disabilities and their families? This is establishment of unique ways of communication, handling social expectations, understanding time management, and overcoming self-doubt. These are some of the areas in which the children really need huge inputs. Building a solid sibling rapport, managing childcare expenses, and creating the ideal support system is quite a challenge for families that have children with disabilities. There are different kinds of neurological issues that can cause developmental problems in a child. The primary issue faced by parents is the lack of different ways of communication. The child finds it difficult to communicate simple daily living needs. Handling social expectations. We live in a competitive environment where most things are measured by numbers. The most people tend to be understanding of the situation. It might not be the case always. It is crucial to stay away from these social pressures and concentrate on the essential aspects to bring the normal childhood of a special child. Understanding time management can be quite challenging for a child with disabilities. A special child needs constant attention and support. They require assistance even for trivial things. It is essential for parents to feel overwhelmed and exhausted at times. Parenthood is a roller coaster of self-doubt and confusion. It is natural for parents to second-guess their decisions. This uncertainty can sometimes blow out of proportion in case of a special child. Building a good sibling rapport can go a long way in helping children with disabilities. Sibling rivalry is a common aspect of growing up. Children may find it challenging to understand the situation. This can be done by bringing equality in treating both the children as much as possible, keeping things fair for both of them. Managing childcare expenses. Raising a child with special needs is an expensive proposition. Unlike other families, both parents do not have the liberty of working in these homes. Parents can develop a system to attempt to work at home or part-time options to manage their bills. Conclusion. Exceptional children or children with disabilities are like any other category of children. It's just that they deviate from what is supposed to be average in physical, mental, emotional, or social characteristics. They are children who have some difficulties which come in the way of their being able to function adequately in the family, in the community, and in the school environment. The difficulty, as I've mentioned earlier, could be physical, cognitive, language, social, emotional, or psychological. These children need special inputs to help them overcome their difficulties. For example, a child with Down syndrome needs special help to learn. I hope this lecture helped you understand the needs of children with disabilities, the characteristics, their daily living functioning, and the kind of inputs that can help them in overcoming the difficulties they face. Whenever a diagnosis of a disability is made in front of a family, it is often very, very difficult. It is very difficult for a family to accept a disability, and very often the emotions of anger, denial, or why is it happening to me does come up whenever there is a diagnosis of a disability. So it is very, very difficult for a family to, should I stop? Should I stop? You people are talking. I thought something was going wrong. I hope this lecture on children with special needs helped you to understand children with disabilities, the kind of disabilities that one comes across, the kind of challenges the family and the caregivers face, and the kind of inputs that these children require both at home and in school and in the community. Whenever a parent has to face the diagnosis of a disability, it is often a very, very difficult and emotional situation. There are emotions ranging from anger, fear, denial, and why is it happening to me or to my child only? These are the common emotions that one comes across during the diagnosis of a disability. The first step to deal with disability is to accept the disability. Acceptance is not always easy, and parents often move from one practitioner to another just in the hope that the other practitioner will nullify what the previous one has said. And only after repeatedly consulting a number of practitioners, parents come to accept the fact, yes, that the child is having a disability and will require special attention at home and special caregiving as well. Now, once the acceptance is there, then comes the next step, and that is, what does one do for the child, both at the family level and at the school level? When the baby is small, obviously, the support given to the baby is by the family members, which includes parents, siblings, probably grandparents, who are the caregivers within the home. The child has to be screened, and this has to be done by a special educator, or firstly, the child has to go through the medical tests to ratify as to what is the type of disability that the child is facing. Disability could be genetic, or it could be environmental factors. It could be, the cause could be either of them. Now, once the disability is identified, we may also have to provide, in case of a physical disability, for example, physiotherapy and other areas of inputs. In the case of sensory disabilities, we may have to provide different kinds of inputs to the child. So, early intervention or early screening plays a very, very important role in providing services to the child with disabilities. Early intervention comes with awareness. So the parents, once they identify the disability, with the help of a medical practitioner, can always accept early intervention from the special educators or special medical practitioners, as I mentioned earlier also. Now, each disability requires a special kind of treatment. For example, a child with sensory disability, a child with low vision, requires visits to the ophthalmologist to correct the vision if it is just an impairment or it is a minor defect. In case of a major issue with the vision, where the child's vision is highly affected, the child may have to undergo a surgery, or in some cases, there may be no further treatment that may work for the child. In which case, the parents have to think of how to equip the child to deal with daily life issues. Mobility is one such thing that children with visual disabilities need to acquire. Mobility, helping in mobility training and mobility, is a very, very important aspect that needs to be dealt with while we are dealing with visual disabilities. Once the child is older in school, the child may need, books which have with the bigger fonts, or may require, training in braille software, etc. And orientation and mobility sessions can be provided to the child so that the child does not knock into the walls or does not fall down from the staircase, etc. And children with visual disabilities are often, gifted, and they are very fond of music and often pursue subjects with humanities or music in their curriculum. The second sensory disability that I would just like to touch upon very briefly is hearing impairment. Now, what is hearing impairment? Again, the cause of hearing impairment could be genetic or it could be environmental. It could be a prenatal cause during pregnancy. So the child could be hard of hearing, in which case the child's hearing could be corrected with the help of hearing aids. The primary thing to be done here is to screen the hearing of the child. How does one screen the hearing of the child? This can be done with the help of an audiogram. The test that one refers to primarily is pure tone audiometry, in which we get to know the extent of hearing loss. And depending upon the extent of hearing loss is measured in the unit decibels. So depending on the extent of hearing loss, the child can be categorized as a child with mild, moderate, severe, or profound hearing disability. The child can be made to, some classroom adaptations can be made for the child. For example, the child can be made to sit right in the front so that he or she can listen to the teacher carefully. And very often, children with hearing disabilities also may require speech therapy as part of their prognosis. So, a multidisciplinary team is often required to treat children with disabilities. So, early intervention, as I mentioned earlier, plays a crucial role in addressing the disability of the child and helping the child to be included in a normal classroom with normal children. The term inclusion is often used to refer to this kind of teaching, where children with disabilities study in normal schools with normal children. They can be provided with special inputs, outside the classroom with some special lessons from a special educator, but they are, happy to sit in the normal classroom with normal children, interact with other children, develop their peer relationships with other children, because ultimately the child has to come and live in a society where there are normal human beings. Now, what are the different techniques that children with hearing disabilities use to communicate with the outer world? So, one is we have to work on their listening skills. Whatever residual hearing is left in the child, we need to work on that. And we need to work on speech therapy, where the child is encouraged to speak the sounds with the help of a speech therapist. The third thing that we can do with a hearing impaired child is lip reading. And the last method that one uses with children with hearing disabilities is sign language. Sign language, of course, there's an international system of sign language which is used globally for children, for anybody with hearing disability. So children can be included in normal schools as part of the normal school environment. Yes, inclusion is not as easy as it seems to be theoretically. A lot of effort has to go in. from the teachers, from the special educators, from the multidisciplinary team and head of the institution to make the environment inclusive. Inclusive education refers to a kind of education where all the children participate in all the activities of the school, irrespective of the kind of disability that they possess. So every child is given the opportunity to participate in both curricular and extracurricular activities along with normal children, and also provided with the infrastructure that is required to help children with disabilities to move around freely so that they can reach their classrooms and their playgrounds along with their normal peers. So these are the two sensory disabilities that we will be discussing in greater detail in our next session. So apart from that, there are certain behavioral difficulties that children face, which can be again recognized early in life and treated. And these are, commonly fear, aggression, bedwetting, thumb sucking, and, truancy, etc. And the cause of behavior difficulties are numerous. It could be the family environment that is faulty, or improper role models in the family. So behavior difficulties, we do not call them behavior problems, or we do not say that the child is a problem child, because a child is facing certain difficulties because the environment of the child is not conducive for his growth and well-being. So here again, going to the counselor, going to the child guidance clinic, identifying the difficulty that the child is facing. Now, what is a behavior difficulty? Any behavior which is repetitive, or any behavior which occurs very frequently, or any behavior which has a lot of intensity to it, is considered a problematic situation. Once in a while, every child will get angry. Once in a while, children have all kinds of fears. They have fear of darkness, they have fear of animals, they have fear of water, they have fear of heights, they have fear of insects. But when fears become unrealistic, that is where the problem starts. So any behavior which becomes repetitive, for example, aggression in a school environment or in a home environment, where it is uncontrolled aggression and the child intentionally or unintentionally harms another child or bullies another child, this kind of behavior becomes a behavior difficulty which needs to be addressed on time so that it is corrected effectively. The child can be counseled in the child guidance clinic. In case the family environment needs to be improved, family therapy is another option that can be exercised for the child so that the child can lead a normal, healthy life. Most of the behavior difficulties are often related to a certain stage of development and also disappear with time, but there are some which really require treatment, which could be in terms of drugs or counseling. As I mentioned earlier, for the individual child, it could be play therapy in the child guidance clinic, or it could be family therapy, depending on the kind of problem that we are addressing. We will also be talking about learning disabilities in the forthcoming sessions. And you all know about learning disabilities, often commonly referred to as, one of them is dyslexia, where the child has a problem in reading, writing, speaking, spellings, and also very often the child happens to write letters that are inverted. So children with dyslexia can be identified in the classroom by a teacher who can make out from the handwriting of the child if there are too many spelling mistakes or there are inverted letters and so on. And this can also be effectively treated if the screening is done at an earlier stage and early intervention techniques are used. I'm also attaching a bibliography here that I have used for the entire PPT. You are welcome to go through these for more details, to get a better understanding, to get a clearer understanding of the disabilities that I have addressed in the PPT. Since this is a vast area, one could only cover certain portions of each disability in this session. And I know that many more sessions have to be done in detail on autism, on learning disability, on sensory disabilities, on intellectual disabilities, and on physical, orthopedic disabilities like cerebral palsy, etc. And each disability has to be dealt with in a particular perspective of its own. So I have only managed to tell you who are children with special needs, what are their requirements, what does the PWD Act say about rights of persons with disabilities, what are the challenges that the family faces, what are the attitudes of people towards disability. This is where I think we need to really work on. We need to sensitize the community to understand people with disabilities, to develop a more sensitive attitude towards people with disabilities. We don't need to sympathize with them. We need to empathize with them and understand the problems that they are facing and create a better world for them to live in. And I've just told you very briefly about sensory disabilities and a little bit about behavior difficulties faced by children, and very, very briefly on specific learning disability in the context of dyslexia. And you can go through this bibliography, and there are books available on exceptional children. There's a very good book by Samuel Kirk called Exceptional Children. There are other books on exceptional children by Hallahan and Kaufman, which you can refer to, and you can get a very clear understanding of the area of disability in case you are passionate and you want to know more about this area. So thank you so much.